Well, we have a lot of countries that want to come in. So for years and years, these clowns that like to criticize me, well, we disagree. Well, they never got anything. They never got anything done. They've been fighting for peace in the Middle East. And then when I came in, I was told it was an impossible thing. You could never get it done. And we went around the other way. Instead of dealing with the Palestinians, we took the money away. We used to give them $750 million, and they treat us badly. I said, why do they treat us badly? We give them all this money. Nobody ever did this. I took it away. They're going to make a deal. You watch. But we started dealing with other people, and everyone said this couldn't happen. And we made a deal with UAE, led by a man, Mohammed, who's a great leader, a great warrior. And we made a deal with UAE. Then Bahrain came in, and we have many others going to be coming in over a short period of time. And the Palestinians will ultimately come in, too. And you're going to have peace in the Middle East without being stupid and shooting everybody and killing everybody and having blood all over the sand.
President Trump letting everybody know there are deals that are getting done. It's not just all talk. Deals that are getting done in the Middle East, increasing stability, helping our ally Israel, and bringing more Muslim nations closer to the U.S. foreign policy goals in the region. Let's talk to somebody about exactly how momentous this all is. We have our friend David Effoun with us now. He's the editor-in-chief of the Allgemeiner. David, as always, great to have you.
Always a pleasure, Buck.
So first, tell me, what's going on today? We got the White House, the Abraham Accords, deals getting signed. Let everybody know what's happening.
Well, I think I've said this once before, but I think this best captures it. The president's approach to dealing with the Middle East can best be described as a massacre of sacred cows. And in that clip that you just played, the president referred to it, the approach that they've taken, where they've really looked at everything with a fresh set of eyes and came to the conflict that's riled the region for so long from a completely new direction. And that is really to focus on the countries that are much closer to Israeli interests, have a much more pragmatic approach to their foreign policy, and those that are sort of standing on the threshold of peace with the Jewish state. Start with a low-hanging fruit, if you will, and the rest will follow. So today we saw a signing on the White House lawn, aptly named the Abraham Accords, named after named for the children of Abraham. Obviously, Abraham's two children, Isaac and Ishmael, are said to represent the Muslim world and the Jewish world, bringing them both together in a historic moment, with the United States brokering a deal between Israel and the Gulf states of Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, the first such peace deal in the region since 1994, when you and me, Buck, were kids.
Indeed.
I don't know about you.
So,
I was.
No, for sure. I was a young buck back then. But David, these deals will mean what? Assuming they're implemented as planned. What are the changes here? You know, we hear about normalization of relations between Israel, the UAE, Israel and Bahrain. How big a deal is that? What does that actually mean for the people in those countries?
Well, the incredible thing about these agreements, as opposed to past agreements that Israel has signed with both Egypt and Jordan, is that what we're seeing on the ground for the people, as you say, is an incredible warmth and an incredible willing to cooperate and to work together and to get to know each other and to sort of integrate societies. So there's a huge business and economic component here. There's air travel running between the two countries, including over Saudi Arabia, who for the first time has agreed to allow air travel from Israeli aircraft across its airspace. But there's also a security element, which is super important. There's a lot of shared concern between Israel and the Gulf states and others in the region over Iranian expansionism, which is a big issue. Of course, all forms of extremism on the ground. But I think beyond that, there is a whole host of challenges that are faced by states in the region, primarily water challenges, agricultural challenges, cybersecurity challenges, that Israel has faced and found incredible solutions to. And some of the biggest challenges that are facing the UAE and Bahrain today have easy out-of-the-box solutions that have been developed in Israel. So what's incredible about this deal is that it's not necessarily moral or ideological or charitable in terms of how these states have changed their view. It's interest first. The interests have aligned in a way that has brought people together. And that's really the bedrock of a long-lasting, warm, far-reaching, secure, stable peace that we're seeing emerging today.
Speaking to David Affoon, editor-in-chief of the Allgemeiner, a great news site that focuses on Israeli, Jewish, and Mideast issues. David, what would you like to see? Now, we don't know if Trump is going to get 4 more years or not. Let's assume for our purposes that he does. What would you like to see as the follow-on agreements, actions? And now that it sounds like we have momentum here, perhaps we even have a framework for a more durable future Mideast peace. What do you want to see as the next steps if Trump gets those 4 more years and has his team pursuing these goals?
Well, I'm pretty confident that the outcome of this election in the United States will tell us a lot about the future of peace and stability in that region. There's no question that there are some actors that are sort of lukewarm, sitting on the fence, that are waiting to see the outcome of the election. There's an understanding that America's diplomatic relations are going to head in a very different direction if there is to be a Biden administration. And they want to wait and see what happens. They're not ready to quite jump in right now at a moment where things may change quite dramatically. So I'm pretty confident that those that are on the fence are waiting to see where things go and will jump in if Trump is reelected. There are also those that I wouldn't describe as sitting on the fence, but really malicious actors in the region, including the Iranians and others like that, who are also trying to wait out the Trump administration in the hope that they're going to have a more charitable administration following the Trump administration. Certainly, there's indication from the Biden camp that he would sort of follow the Obama approach when it comes to dealings with Iran. The Palestinians as well. I mean, they're putting out statements. They're opposing the normalization that we've seen today. They're sort of jumping up and down. They're sulking. They're crying. They're not presenting any alternatives. But it's pretty clear that their strategy in terms of moving forward is just to wait and see what happens. But if there is another 4 years of the Trump administration, they're going to be between a rock and a hard place. And they're going to have to take steps if they want to avoid a further deterioration of their diplomatic standing. They're going to be forced to take steps, which is really necessary, this sort of jolt and earthquake under their feet, to get them to move forward and to take the risks that are necessary for peace, to come to the table and to get real and to get serious about it.
But what would be the next realistic step in this process that if we could get an agreement, a next agreement similar to the Bahrain or UAE deal, what would be the country and what would it stipulate? Leave aside the Palestinians for a second. Let's talk about other actors in the region.
Well, there are a whole host of others that have, let's say, expressed tepid interest in the way things are developing. The most obvious is Oman. There was a bit of a screw up with Sudan, where Foreign Ministry spokesman put out a statement saying that they were jumping into the circle of peace, as it's been referred to as well, but then they walked it back. But I don't think they're too far down the line. The big prize is Saudi Arabia. And the movement that we're seeing now, opening up the airspace, the very fact that Bahrain was part of the agreement that we saw today, and of course Bahrain is almost a vassal state of Saudi Arabia, just sort of completely dependent on the Saudis for absolutely everything. That couldn't have happened without Saudi blessing and approval. So that's something that we could see coming up pretty soon. It's more delicate there in terms of the Saudi geopolitical position, but I think it's just a matter of time. It's inevitable.
So you think we could get a U.S. brokered Israeli-Saudi peace deal in the next 4 years of a Trump presidency, possibly?
I do, and the chances of that happening are about, let's say, 50 times more likely if Trump is reelected.
David Afun, everybody, the Algeminer. Check it out, thealgeminer.com. David, always good to have you on, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Likewise. Take care.
I like this story. I think it's good. Let's see what these professional athletes, superstar, millionaire, celebrities are really all about. The L.A. County Sheriff calls on LeBron James here, according to CBS Los Angeles affiliate, to step up to the plate and double the reward to find the gunman in the ambush of the two deputies. Sheriff Alex Villanueva challenging Lakers star LeBron James to contribute to efforts to find the gunman who shot two Los Angeles County deputies at point-blank range. Villanueva made the challenge during an interview on a local radio show. There are two private pledges totaling $75,000, in addition to the $100,000 from the county. But the sheriff is calling on James to kick in $175,000 or $350,000. I want to make a challenge to LeBron James, he said. I want you to match that and double that reward because I know you care about law enforcement. Quote, you expressed a very interesting statement on race relations and officer-involved shootings and the impact that it has on the African-American community, and I appreciate that. But likewise, we need to appreciate that respect for life goes across professions, races, creeds, and I'd like to see LeBron James step up to the plate and double that. Do you think LeBron James is going to do this? No, of course not. Now, look, I know how the libs are going to try to defend this. It's like, oh, what is LeBron James supposed to be the one person who's... Yeah, but it's the principle. LeBron James could also just say, look, I'm not writing checks for everything here, but he could publicly state the shooting was horrific and wrong and does not represent anything that Black Lives Matter is supposed to be about. He could very easily do that. But no, instead we have Jameel Hill, who says insane stuff on social media on a regular basis. She says she had a response here. She said that the sheriff, quote, shouldn't be using the cold-blooded murder of two officers to bully a celebrity and further a bad narrative that demanding police accountability means you sanction violence against the police. End quote. No, that's not, you're not demanding accountability. No, I like, this is cute. This is clever. I like the little rewrite here that we always get from the libs on this. The basis of BLM is the murder of unarmed black men is systemic, rooted in racism, widespread and continuous. And that is a lie. But they don't say it's rare. They don't say that those officers are either often justified in the shootings that have become central to the BLM movement, or it was a mistake. No. They don't say that. They just continue on with the lie. Police accountability. The officers involved in these things lose their jobs and face life in prison, even when sometimes they have done a shooting that's entirely justified under the law and under morality. But oh no, now it's about police accountability. See, friends, how we bring this full circle. Just like they want you to agree with systemic racism, now you have to agree with police accountability. Are police not accountable? Show me where the police are not accountable, and let's talk about this. Show me where cops murder unarmed black men with no consequences against them, against the officers. Show me where this is happening. Mike Brown? No, Mike Brown deserved to get shot. They can keep talking about this, and it's sad, and you never want anyone to get shot, but Mike Brown attacked a cop, according to black eyewitnesses and the DOJ. According to Eric Holder and the Obama administration, Mike Brown got what was a legally justified shooting. But they still talk about this. Why? They bring up Trayvon Martin. They say, oh, it's because he was wearing a hoodie. Trayvon Martin was shot by a Hispanic neighborhood watch guy. It wasn't even, I don't think he was even officially part of it. He thought of himself as neighborhood watch. And Trayvon Martin was shot, at least in part, because he tried to bash the guy's head into the concrete and he happened to have a gun. It was a bad move for Trayvon Martin, who was an adult male and 6 feet tall and 180 pounds, despite the photo of a 12-year-old the media liked to show all the time as the Trayvon Martin photo in the media, right? Just like the Mike Brown photo was always him in his cap and gown. I don't even know if I could find a cap and gown photo of me. That's the only photo from all of his social media they'd use, though. Mike Brown, honor student. If you read it, Bonfire of the Vanities, this was seen as a tactic that Tom Wolfe wrote about decades ago. Right? Take the person who may have even been an aggressor, but for the purposes of a specific narrative of racial injustice, turn them into some kind of a hero. Right? Jacob Blake, Kamala Harris shows up and says that Jacob Blake, she's proud of him. He's an alleged rapist, but she's proud of him. When will any of this madness stop? I don't know. People don't want to have discussions rooted in reality and in what is obvious and what is visible and what we all know. Instead, they want to create narratives. They have a story. They stick to it. They put a lot of false assumptions in it. They put a lot of either cherry-picked or just flatly incorrect data in it. And then say, this is the conclusion you draw from this. And if you say, well, hold on, I don't draw that conclusion, they say, you're not allowed to question it. We are, however, allowed to question the critical race theory training that the CDC was planning on doing in contravention of the Trump executive order that was supposed to stop this kind of thing. They were going to go ahead with this anyway, and that tells you a lot about the nature and the approach of the deep state, doesn't it? But they were planning at the Centers for Disease Control to do one of these training sessions where they talk about white oppression and white privilege and, you know, how bad all the white stuff is that's going on. It's really awful, and everyone's told that they have to agree with this. You have to even get on your knees. You know, the, quote, white allies in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where there were riots because the cops shot a guy who was Hispanic trying to stab an officer to death with a knife. They still had riots, though. BLM riots. The Hispanic guy trying to kill a cop with a knife. BLM riots anyway. Yeah, that's the world we live in now. They told the white allies on video to get on their knees. That video was, get on your knees and beg forgiveness from the BLM gods. Yeah, I don't think so. Not on my watch. Ladies and gentlemen, not on my watch. But I'm happy to see that the CDC has been slapped down, and now the latest on this is that they will not be doing their critical race theory training, even though initially Christopher Rufo, who's tracking all this stuff down, said that they were moving forward with a critical race theory training program, and he obtained leaked documents. It was a 13-week series called Naming, Measuring, and Addressing the Impacts of Racism on the Health and Well-Being of the Nation. The first 3 training sessions were focused on racism, sexism, and systems of structured inequality. This is what they're going to be brainwashing CDC employees with. So I know it's now been aborted training, thanks to the president's executive order and the attention that was given to the plan to just go forward with it anyway. But Christopher Rufo has actually obtained the info about these training sessions, and I think you should know what was being planned for critical race theory training within the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC. Here you go. And this is all from Christopher Rufo, who's been the guy unearthing all of this information. He was on Tucker Show recently. It's really fascinating stuff. In sessions, the first 3 sessions, as we just discussed, were racism, sexism, and other systems of structured inequality. Then teaching CDC employees that they must address institutionalized racism and really set things right in the garden of a racist nation. This is all from the official training materials that they have already taught at the CDC in the past, I'm sure, and we're about to teach again, if it were not for the Trump executive order on this. In sessions 6 through 9, the CDC claims that, quote, racism is a public health crisis and that systemic racism, there you go, Systemic racism leads to police killings of unarmed black and brown men and women and leads to the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on communities of color. See, systemic racism. That's always the, we've already talked about that. What is systemic racism? Where does it exist within the system? Find me where it exists. Who's responsible for making it happen within this system? Who's pushing the decisions or the framework that leads to this systemic racism? Rufo continues here. In sessions 10 and 11, the trainers will teach CDC employees that they must target and destroy the values of focus on the individual, the myth of meritocracy, and the myth of American exceptionalism and white supremacist ideology. All of this is textbook critical race theory. This is what is being taught, friends. End quote there. This is what is being taught in federal institutions. With your tax dollars, employees are being told, this is what you must believe. Federal government bureaucrats are trained, right? That's that word, trained to think this way, trained to think this is true. And yet, we're supposed to believe this is in any way helpful. This is going to build a better society. And in the final session of the CDC teaching, quote, employees are taught how to become activists. They will be encouraged to join an anti-racism collaborative with 8 collective action teams focused on communications, making scientific publications anti-racist, and influencing policy and legislation. The whistleblower who came to Rufo writes, quote, I thought maybe they would wisely cancel this training series. Instead, we got a message this morning confirming, this was yesterday, the pressure to participate is palpable, and if you don't, you will have to explain why you aren't a racist. That's right. Friends, in the middle of a pandemic, the CDC is spending time on white supremacy and destroying white supremacist ideas according to these training materials like the meritocracy exists. It's amazing, isn't it? But Russ Vaught, who is the director of OMB, he came out and said, glad to report, per the president's directive, the training is canceled immediately. So, sanity prevailed this time around, but that doesn't mean that it's usually winning. That doesn't mean it's usually the case. Friends, we've got to continue to look at this and shine the light of, honestly, public outrage on this. I mean, it is stunning what we keep seeing with all this stuff. It really is. Really astonishing. Oh, one more thing. I got to spend more time on this tomorrow before we get to roll call. But a judge in Pennsylvania has said that some lockdown measures are unconstitutional. You don't say. We think about this. We've had businesses shut down. We've had mask mandates put in place. We've had all these things. No legislation. This is just by executive fiat. I mean, we've had a stress test of how much America will accept tyranny, and we've just all decided to go along with it. Oh, sure. Why not? What's the worst that could happen? We're seeing what the worst is that could happen. It's the dissolution of our freedoms, our rights, our property, all because people are panicked and so scared all the time because of the media. Darn it.
Hey, Team Buck, it's time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. Team Buck at iHeartMedia.com. That's how you get down with the roll call. Also, you can send us a direct message. Un message, I believe in French. If you would like, you can do this. You can do this on Instagram too. Just go to Buck Sexton, and we'll get your stuff on the air, which is always fun for everyone. Producer Mark, do you ever watch the show Locked Up Abroad?
I think so, actually.
I just talked to my brother.
Is that like the Locked Up but they're locked up in America, but abroad.
Yeah. But it's always.
Yeah.
I was talking to my brothers about this over the weekend because we were saying, what would be? We're having a conversation as we're taking a little trip together, the two brothers and me, and we're taking a little trip, and I was saying, what would be the worst country to be locked up abroad in, but not including like Iran, not including axis of evil countries, so Iran, North Korea, but where were the worst places? And then we just realized that every one of these shows is like the same. It's always a guy who's like, I was on holiday. It's always a British guy, by the way. He's like, I was on holiday. I was like in Vietnam, and I'm like, oh, my mum, I'll fly her down here. I'll make some extra cash by just taking this package. And I'll put it in my bag, and I'll travel to the next place, in Malaysia. I hear it's a great place, Malaysia. And then they went through my bag, and all of a sudden it was a different story altogether. And then they're like, dun, dun, dun. The guy's like caught with drugs, and he's like, you know what I mean? It's always the same thing. So this is a public safety announcement for everybody. Definitely don't travel to any country, but particularly a despotic Islamic country in, say, Southeast Asia or the Middle East, carrying like a kilo of heroin to make some extra money while you're on vacation. That's a bad idea.
Wait, that's not a good idea?
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
I thought that was advised.
Bad idea to do that. Yeah.
It's amazing you have to tell people that.
It's always amazing. These guys are like, hey, it was having a great time on the beach. I'm like surfing. I'm loving it, but I'm running out of money and I'm on holiday and I need to make more cash. So I take this brick of heroin and I'm like, oh, but this guy who gave it to me, he's such a cool cat. Like, what could really go wrong? And then the police lock me in the scariest cell in the world, full of rats and giant bugs. And you're like, yeah, that's what happens. Don't do that. So I just thought it was an important safety tip for everybody. All right.
I'll take note of it. Thank you.
Yeah. Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. Team Buck. I saw it. I was just thinking about that show recently. I've seen it so many times. All right. Katie kicks us off with roll call here. Hey, Buck. Thanks for your interview with Inez Felcher about the rise of homeschooling. I taught in public school long enough to become very disillusioned with it. Now I'm happily homeschooling my own kid in Mississippi, one of the most supportive states for homeschooling. Because of this, there's a rich homeschooling community here that rivals any community provided through public schooling. We have sports teams, honor societies, clubs, and friendships provided through the many and diverse homeschool cooperatives and Facebook groups. To any parent that thinks they aren't qualified to teach their own kid, I would say if you have a high school education or even the cognitive ability to get one, you are qualified. And what's more, as much as those devoted teachers love their students, you know and love your kid more than they do and will give them what they need to succeed. Shields high to you and all the families trying to do best they can for their kids. Well, Katie, thank you so much for writing in about that. And I think that is a big part of it for a lot of people, the concern over whether they are able, even if they want to homeschool, are they able to homeschool? I think that's a big part of what holds people back from it. So that's really important to hear from someone who's both been a public school teacher and also knows the ins and outs of how to homeschool. So I hope that this happens a lot more. If nothing else, it would be great for there to be more marketplace competition that's not just based on the finances necessary for a private or even parochial school education, but the public schools need to know that they're not just going to get the same number of kids in the same district every year and the same money and not really have much in the way of standards to meet. Now, I know there are very good public schools. There are a lot. I understand that. There are also a lot of really bad public schools. Frank writes, love the show. Of course. Frank, you're a man who knows how to get on roll call. I saw the Tom Hanks movie on Apple TV. Very much enjoyed it. Actually, he is on a destroyer, I believe, not a submarine. It was very suspenseful and the time went by quickly. I also enjoyed seeing the details of how a ship is captained minute by minute during a conflict. I think it would be worth seeing. Well, I got to tell you, Frank, I'm still curious. Yeah, I just saw the trailer, and I guess I assumed it was a submarine for some reason, although that doesn't make much sense in retrospect. It doesn't look like a submarine, does it? Why did I think it was a submarine movie? Maybe I'm just getting confused with The Hunt for Red October in my brain, which can happen. But if you like it, I'm definitely down to check it out. I'm not going to bother Producer Mark every day about whether he's seen Cobra Kai, but today I'm Producer Mark. Have you watched Cobra Kai yet?
Have you watched The Mighty Ducks yet?
All right, fair point. But Cobra Kai is 30 minutes long, so I'm just saying. And I think you
30-minute long movie?
No, it's a show.
Oh.
So it's like many episodes. So you can watch 30 minutes at a time. But you'll know if you like it based on the 30 minutes. And I even think Mrs. Mark has seen The Karate Kid, right? The movie, the original?
I think everyone's seen The Karate
I think so.
Kid.
I think it's like up there with Back to the Future, E.T. These are movies you had to see. Like this was mandated.
Ralph Macchio's a big Long Island guy, so.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, if you go back and watch that, unfortunately, as I've had to explain to people before, I am not a hand-to-hand expert by any stretch of the imagination. But I do know that the crane kick, don't try that one at home, folks. Don't try that one in a bar fight. That's like the worst finishing move I've ever seen in my life. Go on one leg, lift your knee up. It's like you're begging for someone to shoot for your legs, tack you to the ground, and pound your face in. It's like the worst thing I've ever seen in a. But anyway, doesn't matter.
It looked good for a movie.
It looked cool in the movie. And when I was a kid, I was like, I want to learn the crane kick because I can beat up all the bad guys with my crane kick. Just like that. Saying.
You definitely were like the kid. Like you've said before, how you're the one who always talked to the cops in college.
Oh, yeah.
You were always the goody two-shoes. You were like best friends with the teacher, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the teachers like
I don't
me.
even have to guess.
Yeah, the teachers like me. There's no question. I don't like being when I got older though. I think once I hit puberty and became like a little more manly, I don't like being told what to do, which was a big problem for working in the CIA and then the NYPD. So big problem.
Were you a hall monitor?
No, get the blank out of
a
here.
lunchroom monitor?
No way. I will never.
You seem like that type.
Go blank yourself, producer Mark. That's uncalled for. Absolutely false. False. I'm not narking on people. That's ridiculous. Ridiculous. No, I got in a little bit of trouble in high school, actually. They instituted the Sexton Lateness rule, where if you were less than 30-minute commute from school, you'd start to get double detention. I'm serious. Because a lot of kids traveled from really far away. Yeah. Oh, this will shock you. I was late in high school all the time. And you know why? I figured out that we had free periods sometimes. And I figured out that your first detention, or rather your detention for missing one free period would be, I think it was 15 minutes or 30 minutes. But my free period in the morning could sometimes be an hour. So instead of checking in on time and then just sitting there for an hour and studying, I would just sleep. And then go in and then take my 15 minutes of detention afterwards. They had to change the rule for me, too. So that's what I was like, if you really want to know.
This is like now. You show up an hour late for the show and take the yelling from me.
Well, but I'm just saying, like, you're saying I'm a hall. I'm definitely not a hall monitor because I was late all the time. So I was not going to be good at that. But
that's fair.
Yeah. So next up here. Let's see. We get Adam. First of all, great hair, even better show. Thank you, Adam. I'm not sure I agree with that analysis a little bit, but thank you. I learn a lot from lists. I'm just saying that is the hair better than the show? I think there's a case. There's a case to be made. I'm just asking questions. I learn a lot from listening, and I try to pass the buck whenever I can. My question is, how did the Democrat Party so successfully brand the Republican Party as evil? Anyone who knows basic American history knows the worst policies and most racist candidates were part of the Democrat Party. Of course, there are and have been bad Republicans, too. It just seems that it's accepted without question that Republicans are evil and Democrats are good. In your opinion, how did the left accomplish this? Adam, that's a fascinating question. I mean, it's one that many people, and myself included, have thought about a lot before. And I don't have a good, pithy roll call answer for you. Wouldn't it seem like in a reasonable, rational world, the Democrat Party, because of its defense of slavery, its Jim Crow, it's segregation, all the Dixiecrats, all this bad racial stuff from our past, and it is terrible, it is unjust, and it is wrong, it is something that we have had to confront, and we did confront also with a civil war, for example, where hundreds of thousands of Americans died in battlefield and got their limbs blown off, and so we confronted it at one point in a big way. But and then continued to struggle through it, and then the civil rights era, and anyway. I'm not going to do the whole history of it right now, but how did the Democrats pull this switch? I mean, I think you could argue the greatest trick the Democrats ever pulled was convincing the Democrat Party that it's not deeply racist in its history, because it is. And how do they do that? There's a cognitive dissonance there. Adam, I mean, yeah, they have control of the media and academia and there's an absolutism that is very commonplace among Democrats that I don't think you find among Republicans. But it's amazing how they've done it. I'd have to tell you that. I think it is pretty amazing. All right, David next up here. Producer Mark, let me help you understand why the fans booed at the game Thursday night. There are two very good reasons. One, the long-established tradition to properly show respect for the flag and the country is to stand, if able, while the anthem is playing. There are no other accepted practices for this. Wait, David, we're going to have to come back to this tomorrow because we're running out of time. Everybody, we'll continue this roll call on the rest of the show tomorrow. Pass the buck. Go to bucksexton.com, too. Shields high.